Hey, Jenny.
Hi, Monica.
So I think it's a good idea that we come on here and let people know, what this podcast is all about, why we're doing this.
Yes, absolutely. One of the reasons why I think this podcast is important is because pursuing my dream of acting has been something that's lived inside me for such a long time, since childhood, but it's always been so discouraged. And I feel like I'm not the only one. But so often, especially now during this whole self-tape world where we barely even get to see other actors, we often feel so alone. And as I've gone through my life of, I don't care, I'm gonna be an actor. Oh no, I need a real job to, oh wait, I still want to pursue this acting thing. Oh no, have kids now. I can't do it. And just this whole back and forth. And then it was in my second mat leave when I went back to work. And I was a flight attendant for many years where I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna like this thing isn't gonna die. This dream of mine isn't dead. And I'm just gonna, I don't know, casually get on Actors Access. And I'm going to, I don't know, casually find a headshot photographer on Kijiji. I'm gonna just start doing the research and building a little bit of a career for myself. And little by little, it was gaining traction. And what I actually found was I kept telling myself this limiting story about how I'm never really gonna make it because
Mm.
I'm a mom. I'm older now, right? Like if I didn't make it in my 20s, like why am I going to make it in my 30s, late 30s into my 40s, right? Like how is that going to look? My chances aren't getting any better is basically what I thought in my head. And as a BIPOC, right? Back then, I think it would be called a visual minority. As a visual minority, right? Woman with kids, like I had all these stories and being in Canada. I was like, there's
Yeah.
nothing good here, right? Like these are just all the stories that I told about myself. And then I was watching some of my favorite shows. So three of my favorite shows at that time were Handmaid's Tale, Kim's Convenience, and Working Moms. I enjoyed
Yeah.
all three of those immensely. And as I was watching, I realized that Amanda Brugel
Mhm.
was in all three of those as a recurring character at the same time. Because then that was another thing. I was like, well, if my dream of being a series regular, well, then I won't be able to do another show. Like I'd be, in this one thing. But it's like she was doing this in three different shows. She was recurring. Maybe she wasn't a series regular, but she was working. She was working.
Yeah.
And then I looked into it and I was like, all three of these shows are shot in Toronto, which is where I live. And then I looked further into it. And then another sort of layer of my limiting belief that I was telling myself was that no no successful actors stay happily married. They always get divorced. And then right, because we hear about these breakups and everything in Hollywood
In
and stuff.
Hollywood. Yeah.
And that was sort of like another story that I was telling myself because, oh, as an actor, you got to go where the production is and you're flying all over. You can't be with your spouse all the time and you leave your family behind.
Hmm.
But Amanda Brugel, she is a BIPOC woman. And at that time, we were about the same age. And she also has two kids.
Hmm. Hmm.
It blew my mind. And in that instant, I was inspired and I was like, I can do this. And even though I still come up with moments like that, right? When you book something and you're like, oh my God, I can't do pickup. Oh my God, I can't, one of the first gigs that I booked was on Cutie Pugs and I was on set for a week and both
Hmm.
my kids were still in daycare. Like they were still like babies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I almost said no. And luckily my husband was like, no way, we will make this work. Right. Like at that point, I was working full time, but I was doing drop off and pick up every day, doing lunches, doing dinners, doing all of it. But he was like, you know what? It's fine for this 1 week. I can do it. And obviously he's done more. But in my mind, I was just like, I don't know. And I'm so lucky that he was like, no, you
Yeah.
doing this because I was trying to be like, oh, I'll just drive back and forth like 3 hours every day to make sure I'm home. And he was like, no, you can stay a week on production, and which I did. And you still feel the guilt about it. And even now, right? When I book something and if I have to be in Ottawa for a week, right? And now I'm I'm not here for Valentine's Day. Like, just this past Valentine's Day, I was on set, right? And
Hmm.
my husband's like, "Oh, okay, well, I had plans, but I'm gonna cancel it." And I was just like, "Is that okay? Like, am I a bad wife?" But these are all the things that I think as women we go through and we feel, and I think it's important to discuss so that we don't feel alone, so that we understand and we are supporting each other and rooting for each other. And yeah, I thought that's why I think this podcast is important, and all of these conversations and getting the inspiration for how all these other women make it happen.
Yeah, 100%. So to talk a little bit about my experience as well. So yeah, I mean, I went to theater school. I was in the industry for a little bit, and then I left the industry because I just couldn't see how you could have a sustainable career in the business. And I created a lot of narratives around why I couldn't do it and why it wasn't possible. And I developed another career. I was 9 to 5 working in a corporate environment for many, many, many years. And then I started working with a life coach, and the conversation about acting just kept popping up. And I remember just having so much resistance, like I had really built up some strong walls, that were I can't I have kids. I have, I have, like you said, the pickups and the drop offs. And like, I have this, what am I like acting? What are you talking about? And she was like, yeah, but it's something you enjoy, right? Like, it's something that you like. And I was like, yes, but what am I going to do with that? There's nothing I can. She's like, well, take a class. And I said, okay. So that's kind of how I started to get back into it. I started taking a class, and then you start to reconnect with yourself, and you start to realize like all these things that you've just been like pushing away. And I was like, this is you learn about as an artist, as an actor, you learn about yourself, you learn about human behavior, it felt like I was reconnecting with myself in a way I hadn't in years. And so I started on that path, and then it's baby steps, right? You start talking to people in the industry again, and then you start to, okay, maybe I'll go get my headshots done. And then maybe I'll start, meeting with an agent and see if, there's something here. And then I start auditioning, and then I'm getting callbacks, and it starts to build. And suddenly I found myself back in the industry that I had told myself I could never make it in. I could never have a career in, or how would I possibly do that with children? And I mean, a lot of it is, yeah, it's so important that you have the right people around you to support you, to help you make it happen, because you do, when you book a job, you might have to leave at a moment's notice. I remember one of the first roles I booked that was sort of substantial was a lead in a movie of the week. And it was filming in Newmarket and in Barrie. And my kids were small at the time too. And I remember I would be up at on the road at 6 a.m. And so everyone would be sleeping, and I'd be on the road on my way to set, and I'd be coming home at like 9 p.m. at night, and just in time to tuck them in. And I felt so much guilt. I remember feeling so tired, and honestly, sometimes I was just tired from worrying about how I'm neglecting my role as a parent, maybe, or your energy is so, I think as a parent, your energy is like so split, right? Your kids take some of it, your partner takes some of it, your job, but then there's your family. I have parents now who are elderly. I have a lot of caregiving responsibilities. So I do feel like as a woman, I'm juggling so much. And so I think why I love the idea of doing this podcast is we get to highlight women who are doing all of these amazing things, who are, because it is hard to pursue a career like this. I think it's so important that we shine light on that. We shine light on the challenges, those specific challenges that us women face, being a parent, having a partner, having elderly parents, or if you're, a multi hyphenate who is just juggling so many different things to make ends meet. Like, these are challenging circumstances, but they also make us resilient. They make us strong, shows how much capacity we have and how much we can do. And while still being amazing parents, I think we're also showing our kids that it's possible to chase your dreams. It's possible to pursue your passion while still, being there for the ones you love. Well, that for me is what this podcast is about. And Jinny, I've loved doing these interviews with you. I have so much respect for you as a woman and artist. And I think it's really cool we get to do this together.
Yes, I'm so glad that you are my co-host and we get to navigate this world together. And we've had such inspiring stories. And like, I always get emotional talking about it. Like, even right now, I could totally just cry listening to your story. Totally cry. Like, and like a few times during our interviews, I've just been like, excuse me, just put this on mute. I'm not crying, you are. But it's true because it all hits so deep.
Mhm, mhm.
But
So,
I
yeah.
think it's so important to have these conversations and yeah, how it inspires our children, I think is really important.
Yeah. So we hope to anyone who's listening that you enjoy this upcoming season of Hitting Her Mark. We've interviewed some really inspiring women, filmmakers, directors, artists, creators. There's so many great stories and tidbits to be taken away. So we hope you tune in. We hope you subscribe. And we're so excited for you to join us on this journey.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.